Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 191 of a year of change. Today we're going to talk about where we're sort of starting off cutting down the sugar. Something that I think is probably going to end up being the main hurdle that we need to get over. For a lot of us, and I'm not even really a big sugar person. My stuff's always been salt. There's something that is attached to it that really sort of keeps us hooked, and I think is what keeps us going back for more. We've all I've even done this myself. We've all eaten so much sugar at one point in one sitting that it's too much, and you have to have a drink of water or milk or something to just sort of offset all that sugar, and yet we keep going, and we keep coming back for it. And there's more than really a physical attachment, I think. I mean, there is evidence, we'll look at this later on in the week, there is evidence that sugar is actually very highly addictive. But more than that, there's an emotional component that goes along with it, I think, for a lot of us. Because when we're kids, if your parents ever rewarded you with a treat of some sort, whether it's for doing well or if you got hurt or whatever it was, no parent ever says, "Oh, well, don't worry, and we'll make you feel better. We'll get you some, salted peanuts or something." It's always something with sugar attached to it, like ice cream or cake or cookies or something like that. Because as a kid, that's what you want. You want something with lots and lots of sugar in it because it's great. And I think that emotional connection sort of sticks with us, whether it's something very specific to one sort of like one type of sweet, or if it's something that is just generally associated with sugar. On top of everything else, we know that sugar can affect our moods. Whether it's a matter of withdrawal symptoms that are causing us to get cranky, or people say, well, I have low blood sugar, or I have high blood sugar. It does affect our mood. But I think part of that is that there is that emotional connection along with it. And I've said before, I was never really a big sweet fan, but I've told you my icing story, so I have bouts. But in general, when you're feeling, with a lot of us, you've said it many, many times, all food is comfort food for us. But when it comes to stuff that's sugary, there's, eating a bag of chips is not the same as eating a pie. There is that difference that when you're feeling really, and even myself, when we're just feeling at our worst, when we've had that rough day, or if we've cut ourselves in the mirror and we hate what we see, so instead of actually going too far one way, we go and say, well, I'm just going to eat more, because what's the point? It's generally something sweet that we go for. And I think it's that combination of that emotional attachment and the addictive properties of it, and the fact that when you do eat it, it does release a lot of, I think it's dopamine. Not quite sure. We'll look at that later on. But chemical, there we go. A lot of neurotransmitters in the brain and chemicals in your brain that just associate that with that happy feeling. That, I think, is going to be the toughest thing that we need to overcome. Because, as I say, we've all had that one session where we've eaten too much, and either we get sick to our stomach, so it's not a physiological thing, or we need to get something, that sweet taste out of our mouth because we've had too much, so we know it's not a sensory thing. So I think a big part of it is that emotional attachment to it. That we either not necessarily, what's the word I'm looking for? Consciously, there we go. It's not whether or not we consciously associate it with, a happy memory of childhood, or something positive that happened. Because most times, let's face it, if we're eating to that extent, it's never really a positive experience. At the moment, we feel better, which is really the main reason why we do it. But we know that within 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to feel bad. But we don't care. We want to keep going because at this moment, I feel good. So I'm just going to keep eating things. It's a comfort for us. That, I think, is going to be the hardest part to get over when we're doing this. Now, the first week that we're doing this, some of you are going to cut back, some of you aren't. It's not necessary for this first week. But because mainly we're just looking at, just trying to be aware of exactly how much we're actually taking in. But I understand that there are going to be some people that are just going to sort of push back. I mean, salt was my big thing. That was my main weak point, and still is. I mean, I'm using a lot less salt in my food, but I'm still not below where I need to be for sodium levels. And part of me wants to say, that's still okay. I mean, I may never get there, but I'll keep trying. I mean, we need to get to where we need to be, to get to be. We need to be and get to where being is needed for us to go on. Anyway, I mean, I'm going to keep trying to get down to where I should be. That's what I should have said. But even with me, like that's salt, as difficult as it is, it's not the same as that attachment that we have to sugar. Because in general, there's really no emotional attachment to salt. With me, it was just simply just quantities and the flavor and everything else. But with sugar, I mean, something different happens to us when we eat lots of sugar. Our mood changes, our thought processes change, our emotional well-being changes. And that is going to be the hardest part because it's a lot like smoking, that it's not just a physical addiction to it. There's the social aspect of it. There's the physical motion that is associated with it. So it's not something as simple as just saying, okay, well, I'm going to cut out sugar. You simply are not going to be able to. I mean, we're still getting some with fruits and vegetables and stuff like that, but it's not the same as what we get from that high sugar, high fat junk food. I talked this weekend actually about the sour cream glows. Sour cream glows donut. I don't know where I'm from. I don't know where that accent is from. It's from the sour cream glazed donut. Having something like that is going to be much, much different than eating 5 bags of chips. And that's just how it goes with us. So when you're going through this, understand that this is still going to be a very slow process. We're focusing on this over the next 4 weeks, but we aren't going to be sugar-free in 4 weeks. It's just not possible. I mean, it's possible, but it's not practical for what we're trying to do. So for those of you that are out there that are just going, I can't. I do know someone actually that has been very hesitant. It's too early. See, I can't talk this early. I feel like I'm trying not to enunciate my words. I do have a friend of mine that is very hesitant to start this because, generally speaking, when she does start something like this, she goes far too fast. She does way too much, way too soon. And she says, okay, I'm going to cut out, I'm going to cut out salt. I'm going to cut out sugar. She does 1,000 steps on a stair climber. And it's just like all at once. And I'm trying to get her to ease into something like this. And the sugar thing is a big problem because just like the majority of us, she says, well, I don't have an off button. None of us have an off button. Not at the beginning. As we progress through this, I mean, I'm 6 months in, and to this stage, I mean, it hasn't been bad. I mean, it's a struggle, but you do have that off button where you just go, okay, now I need to stop. But half the time we don't. But I couldn't have done this 6 months ago. You couldn't have put down some jalapeno Cheetos in front of me. The whole bag would have been gone. Whether I was already full or not, they would have been gone. Because we don't have that stop button. It's taken us a long time to get rid of it. And every now and then it does come back. But I don't know where I was going with this. But that's part of what we're trying to get rid of. That's right. That's what I was doing. Okay. So over the next 4 weeks, for those of you that are worried that we're trying to cut everything out, we aren't. Over the next 4 weeks, we're mainly just focusing on this. But for a lot of us, I mean, that off button it's still there. But it's much, much easier for us. We do have it, and it's just a matter of forcing ourselves to stop at some point. But if there are some of you out there that are still at that stage where, that's still a big issue for you, whether it's salt or sugar or fat, whatever it is, we are going to keep trying. We still have another 6 months to go. So we have time to get down to where we need to be. I just think that it's going to be something that we should address because I think it's going to be harder for us to get rid of the sugar aspect of it than anything else. And even for someone like me, who is not a big sweets kind of person, it's still going to be very difficult to cut back on the tremendous amount of sugar that's just in absolutely everything, because we're so accustomed to it that aside from withdrawal symptoms and aside from the psychological aspect of it, there is going to be that emotional component, which I know is still psychological, but bear with me for a moment, that those comfort foods we're going to have to get somewhere else. And ideally, what we're trying to do is to get to a point where food isn't a comfort for us anymore, that we have somewhere else that we can go for it. That, whether it's, I don't want to say jogging because that's kind of weird. I do feel better after jogging or walking, but it's not the same. You know what I mean. I know you know what I mean. But we need to get to a point where that's not our comfort anymore, where we don't go to food. Even if it just means dealing with all the shit that goes on during the run of a day and that we don't have it. Even dealing with it that way is better than dealing with it in the way that we have been for so long. But it will happen. We will get to that point. It's not going to be a matter of you just not being able to continue on. I mean, you've gone this far. If you've gotten to this point at the 6-month mark, then you know what we've gone through in the past. You've been able to make the changes that you need to make. And this is why we're sort of leaving it to the end for the last of the bad things, because it's going to be really tough for a lot of us to do. Even those of us that aren't really sweet fans, we just have so much of it all the time in our life, and we know that comfort that it brings. That's going to be the hard part to get over. It's just that emotional connection more than the physical and more than the tasting and just everything else that's associated with it. But it will happen, so don't worry. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Same thing with everything else that we're doing. It's going to take time, but we will get through it. So hopefully that puts your mind at rest a little bit. If not, I may have actually increased your stress. But again, over 4 months, over 4 weeks, we're going to be focusing on sugar. Not necessarily saying this is our goal to get down to, this is the only thing that we're going to be doing. We're just going to keep gradually cutting back until we're eating a healthy amount, which is almost zero. But, we still need it, so we have to be practical about this. I've cut back to 1 sugar in my coffee. Eventually, if I can, I won't mind trying something with no sugar. Just gradually weaning myself off it. But I don't think I'm going to ever replace it with a sweetener. They taste medicinal to me. And I'd rather have that little bit of extra sugar in my coffee instead of going, oh, well, there we go, now everything's all healthy. Because you can't do that all the time. It's not practical, it's not sustainable, and that's the main thing that we're trying to go for. Anyway, I'm repeating myself already from this weekend. I'm 2 days behind, or 1 day behind. No, 1 day. You know what I mean. It was Sunday that I said that. Now I'm repeating one. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video here. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.